Dasha. She's standing just outside the centre at Newzroom here. Zuleka, good morning. What's happening there?
Good morning, Stephen. Well, we're still expecting that there is that continuation of the delegates and world leaders continuing with that arrival, as well as that anticipation for the 10 o'clock closed session where they will be discussing further issues such as artificial intelligence. But I just want to shift our focus as well to what we've been seeing unfolding, particularly the stance that South Africa has adopted, that firm stance in relation to the United States, as Stephen has been speaking about with Crispin Peary, the spokesperson for DIRCO. And I think what's important to also highlight is that we've seen some major economies participating in this process, particularly the G7 countries. You have Japan, you have Canada, you have the United Kingdom. But, of course, we do not have the United States in this process. In fact, yesterday we heard from Germany, which is another major economy, that they were in support of this particular process, which gives us an indication that the world essentially, when it comes to the G20 summit, is in support of what's taking place. Let's just take a listen to what was said yesterday in relation to Germany's stance.
Now, as you know, Germany supports this group. Germany currently supports economic reform projects in compact countries, and we are supporting that with more than 3.2 billion euros. This is a strong lever for new economic opportunities, both for Africa and for my country, for Germany. Today, and this is a great pleasure for me, I can announce a further important step of our engagement. Germany will become a shareholder of the African Trade and Investment Development Insurance through our development bank, which is called KfW, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau. ATIDI is a powerful instrument, as you all know. It boosts trade. It boosts private investment in Africa. It reduces risks and builds trust for investors and for new investors. Our German equity investment in ATIDI will amount to more than 37 million euros now. This will have a big impact. We will be able to mobilize an additional at least 400, potentially 430 million euros or 500 million US dollars in trade and investment.
But to unpack this further, I'm joined by Dr. Oscar van Heerden, who's from the University of Johannesburg, political analyst at the University of Johannesburg, to just unpack what this means. We have the G7 countries supporting South Africa and essentially supporting this important summit outside of the United States. What does that tell us?
No, I think, the unfortunate thing is that President Trump bluffed with the boycott. Ramaphosa called his bluff. And I think when he realized that the G7 leaders actually is in support of the presidency of this G20, the first to take place in Africa, that's when things backfired for them. And you're right, the G7 leaders are very clear. They support the presidency of the G7, they support the agenda, they support the theme, and with the leaders' declaration, we saw all of them coalescing around the messaging around climate, financing of the debts, and so forth. And so I think that there is a chasm that is beginning to occur where, unfortunately, there's no strategic thinking happening in Washington, D.C. And the sooner Trump and Marco Rubio and the rest realize that you cannot ignore Africa, as Europeans and the Far East has done, then the world is saying we will stand together in a multilateral way to try and resolve the problems of the world.
Do you think this was a diplomatic blunder from the United States, given the fact that there is an indication or some perception that they expected that the conversations would center around the United States and their absence here. Whereas conversations continued. They are going to be concluding today. There is a declaration. It has been adopted. Would they have influenced the conversation and the direction more had they been here?
Absolutely. I think they realize this. You can affect change, you can direct change if you are here, as the President has indicated. If you are in the tent, then you are taken serious. You cannot scream from outside of the tent. And I think that the United States is realizing this. And the big question now is, with the G20 presidency moving to the United States next year, how are they going to manage taking that Global South agenda that has now been 4 years in the making? Is it going to be ignored? Is it going to be repackaged? And I think the Troika, South Africa, the US and the UK, being the next G20 host, will have to manage those stormy waters as we get off to Miami.
And the current Troika now is Brazil, South Africa, and the United States, right? And there's questions about the power that the Trump administration has, the United States has, in actually championing this agenda that has been set here at this G20 summit and actually pushing it forward. What powers do they have in potentially dismantling what has already been done or pushing it forward?
It's not going to be possible to dismantle. You know, the process has been negotiated over a year, the various committees and ministerial committees. The declaration is really just a culmination of those agreements. And all the people that are here have agreed to and have made commitments to, as pronounced in the declaration. So Trump, the very best that Trump can do is to say we don't support it and we are not going to be party to it. But the rest of the world is going to do it. And so there's very little they can do to influence that. What they can do and will try and do is to set their own agenda with their own theme for next year. And the question we must ask is it going to be incongruent with this trend that has been happening about the Global South agenda?
You're saying that the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has called the United States president's bluff, right, and continued with the process in the United States' absence. And there's been a lot of admiration for South Africa at this moment, particularly for the man at the helm of the executive. We're seeing some sort of a shift, kind of, and that firm leadership from the president in terms of the leadership and pushing forward in terms of certain agendas, but also this that we are seeing unfold at the moment. We recently saw S&P also, and all of that coming together, boding well, really, for the president.
No, absolutely. I mean, the things are falling in place. It took 6 years since the Tumamina speech, but we are beginning to turn the tide. We can see we're turning a corner. And as you say, things are beginning to look up. Our logistics and transport is being sorted. The ports are operating well because there's been private sector involvement. We see that we've had a surplus in the budget with the midterm budget. We see that there's been some employment, albeit marginal, 140,000 in the last quarter. The S&P ratings that have changed, off the grey list. These are all very powerful and very wonderful things that have happened for the leadership of Ramaphosa. And of course, now with the successful G20. So a lot of feathers in his cap, a lot of feathers in the cap of the GNU, let's not forget. And so I think, it does speak to the kind of leadership that has been provided by Ramaphosa, Lamola, and Dane Zango and others.
That's great. Thank you. That is Dr. Oscar van Heerden, just speaking to us about what we've seen unfold, but also the backlash that has unfolded for the United States, as well as the president and the leadership that he has shown, as well as his entire administration in the success of this G20 summit. It's over to you, Arabile.